So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths. In this video we'll be continuing with the theme of quadratics with a focus on solving quadratic equations graphically part 1. Now, another way of solving a quadratic equation is graphically. Now, although this method when given a choice is the least favourable due to the time and effort needed and the accuracy of its results, it does give reason and understanding of why we solve quadratic equations and what the solutions represent. Now, before solving a quadratic equation graphically, you must first be able to recognize the shape of a quadratic, whether it's a U shape or what we call as an N shape based on the sign of the x squared, or the sine of the degree of x squared, and also be able to plot a quadratic equation correctly using a table of values. Now, if you're not too sure about those two things, I will include a link to 2 videos where I cover each of these topics. Now, the key thing to remember is that when solving a quadratic equation graphically, unlike the algebraic ways of factorizing, using the quadratic formula, or completing the square, the equation does not have to equal 0, though in most cases it will. Now, there are 4 simple steps to solving a quadratic equation graphically. Now, the first step is you make both sides equal to y. Then the second step is you then plot both equations. So often one will be a quadratic, other will be a straight line, or in some higher level cases it might also be another quadratic equation. Then you plot both equations, highlight the intersection points as coordinates, and then your solutions will be the x-ordinates of these intersection points. So let's have a look at an example question. So in this example we've been asked to solve 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 equals 0. And in the first part, and then all the other subsequent questions just have a different equals number, and I'll show you how that makes the question different. So the first thing we want to do is plot y equals, so in terms of this, what we want to do is we want to plot y equals 2x squared plus 5x minus 3, and we also want to plot y equals 0. Now, this red line that you can see on the screen, so let me just label that first. So this line here is y equals 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. And what I need to then do is plot y equals 0. Now, if you've watched the previous video on plotting linear graphs, then y equals 0 is simply the x-axis. So y equals a number, and also y equals a number is going to be a horizontal line through that number. So actually it's not that bad. So this is why it kind of can appear on both the higher and the foundation paper. So looking at this then, so the first one, what we need to do is we've plotted our quadratic equation. So what we now need to do is plot y equals 0, or in other words, highlight the x-axis. So if I just carefully do this, and again it's going to be a little bit fiddly using this software. So what I'm looking for is the intersection points of this line. So let me just label this quickly. So we've got y equals 0, and the intersection points are this point here and that point there. Now what I now need to do is basically give the x-ordinates of where those black dots are. So here for the first one, for a, and let me just write that here. So for a, x equals minus 3, or it can equal, and I give that as being 0.5. Now if you want to write it as a fraction, again, that's absolutely fine. So then that would be your answer. Then for question B, where it says 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 equals 5. So again, we don't necessarily need to make this equal to 0. So what I need to do for this one is plot y equals 5. Now I don't need to plot the quadratic because that's already been plotted. So what I then need to do is just draw a horizontal line through y equals 5, like so. Now again, it's very good practice for you to label your equations as you are plotting. So this line here is y equals 5, and so the intersection points are these little 2 points here. Now what I then need to do is then I need to carefully find what the x-ordinates are going to be. Now hopefully if you're doing this in a classroom, or if you're doing this in an exam, they'll be giving you some proper, more sophisticated, accurate graph paper, I should say. I don't know where I'm going with this, sophisticated. So basically I'm looking for these 2 answers. Now I would say one of the answers for B is where x equals, I would go along minus 3.6. And for the other coordinate, I would say that's close to 1. So I would say that's going to be about 1.1. And again, you can make your estimations. You can use your more accurate graph paper to have a more accurate answer. And then for part C, so here what I need to do is I need to plot y equals minus 3. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a horizontal line through minus 3, like so. And my answers are going to be the x ordinates of where the intersection points lie. So I would say this first one here is around about x equals, let's go for minus 2.6. And the other mark, which is a little bit more clearer, I would say is at 0. So x equals 0. So they're my two answers for part C. Part D then says explain why 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 equals minus 10 has no solutions. So for this, again, what I would do is I follow the same sort of steps as what I did before. Minus 10 would be roughly around here. Let's say, well, actually it wouldn't, but let's just pretend that it is. And let's use a different color that we've not used yet for purple. So you can see here that the reason why it has no solutions because that purple line and the quadratic curve do not intersect. So your answer for this would be because y equals minus 10 rather, and y equals 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 do not intersect. And something along those lines would be absolutely fine. So now let's have a look at some exam style questions that I've taken from some past papers. Now you can have access to these questions by clicking on the link in the description below, and I'll also include the mark scheme as well for you. Let's have a look through these questions. So question 1 says complete the table of values for y equals x squared minus 6x plus 9. Now these questions can appear on both the calculator and the non-calculator. It all depends on how complicated the question is. If it's on a non-calculator, it'd be worth more marks. If it's on a calculator, it may be worth less marks. Well, let's have a look, and I'll try and show you the method that you use for both of those two. So what we need to do here is we don't need to complete the full table, we just need to fill in the empty y values. So if I just put a blue box around this number here, and let's have a look, how do I work that blue value out? So the blue value I'm going to do is I'm going to swap 2 with wherever I see an x in the equation. So here I've got 2 squared minus 6 times 2 plus 9. So working this out, I've got 4 minus 12 plus 9. So here I've got minus 8 plus 9 gives me positive 1. Then if I then substitute x equals 3, so I get 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 9, which gives me 9 minus 18 plus 9, which equals 0. And then for my last value, I substitute x equals 5, so I've got 5 squared plus 6 times 5 plus 9, so I've got 25 minus 30, which is minus 5, plus 9, which is positive 4. And there we go. Now what you should find is that, and also you should find some repeat, or you may find some repeat in the values. So from where it hits its minimum point or maximum point, the numbers then may start to repeat. Now, if this was on the calculator paper, let me just show you how you can do a table of values on the calculator. So what you need to do first is, let me just reset the calculator. So if you press mode, and then you should have an option that says table. And then we've got our fx value comes up. Now where it says fx, what you want to do is using the alpha button and x, you want to enter your equation. So I've got alpha x squared. Oh, not that one. There we go. Minus 6x and then plus 9 equals. Now it might say g of x if we just bypass that by pressing equals. Now your starting value is your smallest x ordinate, which in this case is 0. Your end value is your highest value of x in your table, which is 6. And we're going up in increments of 1, so that's fine. Press equals. Now your f of x values will be your y ordinate. So you can see I've got 941, 941, and then the next number, which is 0, which is correct. Next one is 1. And I've gone, let me go from there. So on the next value we had to calculate was for 1, then it's 0, then it's 1 again, then it's 4, and then it's 9. So absolute spot on in terms of the calculator agreeing with my non-calculator value. And so let's just reset that. And there we go. So the next thing we then need to do is to plot the coordinates. So here, what we've got to do is we've now got to plot, and it's going to be 0, 9, 1, 4, 2, 1, 3, 0, 4, 1, 5, 4, and 6, 9. So these are the coordinates I then need to plot. So 0, 9 is here, and 1, 4 is there, 2, 1 is there, 3, 0, 4, 1, 5, 4, and 6, 9. And you can see there that that does look like a smooth curve. So the next thing for me to then do is join these points up. Now again, yours should be a lot easier to join up than mine. Now try not join them up with a straight line. It should be a smooth curve, which kind of flops there. But it should look something that looks like this. So make sure that your curve goes through all your points that you have drawn, and you also want to make sure that it doesn't go up or down and it is a smooth curve. And again, a lot more difficult doing this on the computer. Part C then says write down the solution of the equation of x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 0. So if I just zoom out so we can see the graph. So here what I want to do is I want to plot y equals x squared minus 6x plus 9, which is already done. That's part B. And so the next thing for me to then do is plot y equals 0, which is basically the x-axis. So the x-axis is here. And you can see at this point that the curve intersects the blue line at one point only, and that is when x equals 3. So there will be our final answer. Moving on to question 2, it says complete table of values for x squared minus 5. So again, for this number here, substituting x equals minus 3, so it's going to be minus 3 squared minus 5. Now if this is non-calculator or even calculator, I always strongly recommend you put your negative numbers in brackets, and always remember that negative numbers times a negative number equals a positive number. So minus 3 squared is minus 3 times minus 3, which is 9, minus 5, which is 4. Then for the next value, I've got to substitute x equals 1, so it's just going to be 1 take away 5, which is minus 4. The next thing I then need to do is plot these coordinates. So straight from the table, I've got minus 3, 4, which is there, minus 2, minus 1, which is there, minus 1, minus 4 is there, 0, minus 5 is there, 1 minus 4, which is there, 2 minus 1 is there, and 3, 4, which is there. And then what you then want to do is then join those points up to try and make a smooth, hopefully I do get better at this as the video progresses. That's not too bad. Next question then says write down the values of x when y equals 0. So again, what I want to do is draw a straight line through y equals 0. So let's do that correctly. So y equals 0 is this line here. And then what I want to do is highlight the x ordinate. So it's this point here and this point here. Now I make that value there to be around about minus 2.2. And this value here is around about 2.2 as well. Now yours might be slightly different. It might be 1 or 2 squares off. And again, the examiner will give you the marks according to what your diagram says, with an element of accuracy in terms of your answers. So moving on to question 3, it's very similar to the previous question. So the first part is asking us complete the table of values for y equals 3 minus x squared. So a slightly more complicated equation simply because our x squared is negative. So this equation should produce a n shape. So looking at this then, we've got minus 3, so we substitute minus 3 in. So let me just highlight that so you can see which number I'm working with. So I've got minus 3, no I haven't, I have got 3 minus 3 squared, which is 3, minus 9, which is minus 6. So this number here is minus 6. Then substituting 0 in there, I've got 3 minus 0, which is 3. And then 3 minus 2 squared, which is 3, take away 4, which is minus 1. Which makes sense. And again, you can see that symmetry in that table of values. The next thing I've then got to do is plot this equation and hope that it resembles an N shape. So minus 3 minus 6 is here. Then we've got minus 2 minus 1. Then we've got minus 1, 2, which is here. Then 0, 3. Then we've got 1 is at 2. And then 2 at minus 1. And 3 at minus 6 is out there. And then all I then need to do is join those points up. Right, something like that. Now the next part then, part C, then says use the graph to work out the values of x when y equals minus 1.5. So what I need to do here is draw a horizontal line at minus 1.5 and do the very best that I can of it. And let me just trace that up like so. And again, the answers are going to be the x ordinates of the intersection point. So if I just highlight that there and highlight this one here. Now, because if your minimum point is at 0, then the two values should be symmetrical from that mirror line of the y-axis. So here I've got minus 2.2 and positive 2.2. And again, yours might be a little bit more accurate, but it should be roughly close to around about minus 2, plus or minus 2.2. Moving on to question 4, it says here is a graph of y equals 2x squared for the values of x of minus 3 to 3. And the question says use the graph to estimate the solutions of 2x squared equals 15. So for this, what we need to do is basically, we've already plotted the quadratic, so we just need to plot y equals 15. So we just need to draw a horizontal line, and just get that line preempted at 15, which I would say is about there. So then from this, all we then need to do is project downwards and see what those values should be. Now, one way, if you're never too sure, is cheekily, you could go on and solve this. So 2x, and I certainly wouldn't show this in your working out. We've got 2x squared equals 15. So x squared equals 15 over 2. So x squared equals 7.5. And if this was on a calculator paper, you could work out what the square root of 7.5 is, plus or minus. And we get an answer of around about 2.7 it should be. So again, that one's probably a little bit faded, but it should be around about 2.7 and 2.7. Now for question B, it says use the graph to estimate the value of root 5. Show clearly how you've obtained your answer. So for this, what we want to do here is, rather than making it equal to root 5, we're going to substitute x equals root 5 into the equation. So if I substituted x equals root 5 into the equation of 2x squared, I then get 2, and then it's going to be root 5 squared, which is 2 times root 25, which is 2 times 5, which is 10. And so then all I then need to do is go up to 10, draw a straight line from 10, and then find those ordinates. So from this then, it's going to be that value there and that value there. So, and I made that out on my graph to be roughly around about 2.2 again. So here it's plus or minus 2.2. Then looking at question 5, it says complete the table of values of y equals x cubed plus 4. Now x cubed plus 4 is going to be an S shape, so it's basically going to look like this, which is going to be slightly elevated. So substituting the numbers in, so I don't know where this question has come in because it's not a quadratic curve, it's a cubic, but we'll follow the same sort of process. So for this first value, it's going to be minus 2 cubed plus 4. So minus 2 times minus 2 times minus 2 is minus 8, plus 4 is minus 4. And then 1 cubed plus 4 equals 5. So then what I then need to do is plot those coordinates. So at 2, so let me just zoom out a little bit. So we've got minus 2 minus 4 is here. And our next value is at minus 1, 3. Our next value is 0, 4. Then 1, 5. And then 2, 12. And then if I join those points up, in which, again, yours will most likely be a lot better than mine, particularly as I've stopped halfway. Then moving on to 4C, it says, now here's where the quadratic question comes in. So it says the graph of y equals 5 plus 3x minus 2x squared is shown for the values of x between minus 2 to 3. It then says write down the solutions of where you've got 5 plus 3x minus 2x squared equals 0. So all I need to do here is basically plot y equals 0, which is just, as we've already mentioned, is the x-axis. I'm looking for where it crosses the x-axis, and they're nice easy points. So one answer is at minus 1 and the other answer is at 2.5. Moving on to question 6, it says complete the table of values for x squared minus 3. So again, all we need to do here is just substitute the values in. So for this first value, I've got minus 1 squared minus 3, which is 1 minus 3, which is minus 2. Then I've got minus 3 and I've got minus 2. And then all we need to do is then plot these points. And again, a little reminder, make sure that you do not use too much of a sort of unsharpened instrument to plot your points and you draw your line. Obviously, it can hinder your accuracy of your results. And then we've got minus 2 and 1. So then plotting this, I'll use a thicker pen just to emphasize where this should be. Like so. Now the next part of part C then says use your graph to work out the values of x when y equals 0.5. So what we need to do here is plot y equals 0.5. So when it's at 0.5, we're looking for this line here, and I work out that to be roughly around about 1.8. So I'd say minus 1.8 and positive 1.8. You may say 1.9, actually it's probably close to 1.9, I would say. Do for that. Then moving on to question 7, again, very, very similar. You can see that how repetitive these types of questions are. So again, just making this a little bit quicker. So we've got minus 4, we've got minus 3, and we're going to end up with 5. So then plotting these points at minus 3, it's at 5. So again, this is going to represent a U shape. So minus 3, 5. We've got minus 2, 0. We've got minus 1 at minus 3. So just need to scroll down. 0 at minus 4. 1 at minus 3. 2 at 0. And 3 at 5. And then we just need to then just join these points up as best that we can, like so. And then for the next point then says draw the graph of y equals 2 on the grid for the values between 3 and 3. Now with this, what we need to do is make sure that when we draw our line, it does go from either side of the graph. It needs to make sure it covers minus 3 and positive 3. So we're drawing y equals 2, so at this point here, and let me just straighten that up like so. And again, we just need to make sure that it does cross this point here and this point here, because we would lose a mark if that was the case. It then says write down the x-ordinates of the points of intersection of the two graphs. So again, we're looking for this point here and this point here. Now again, roughly they should be roughly symmetrical, so I would say that probably this one's probably a little bit off, but I would go for minus 2.5 and positive 2.5. But it is really important that you do go for whatever your graph tells you that you have plotted. So hopefully this makes a little bit of sense, or gives you a bit of an insight to make you feel a little bit more confident with solving quadratic equations graphically when you get approached these questions on your next exam.